we're big believers in niche audience strategies, and the more you can focus and resonate with a specific persona, like I mentioned this already, but our persona, literally you walk around, you tap anyone on the shoulder. Who's our persona? Innovative and scale-seeking sales leaders and CMOs, and boom, and just get to that point where there's such alignment and that there's an attraction model both internally and externally because of that.
Welcome to CustomerBloom's Growing Business Faster podcast, where we talk about all things related to growing and scaling your business in today's hyper-connected world. Gain insightful tips from experts about the tactics and tools that will make your business stronger. Now get prepared to accelerate your success with your host, Matt Coffey.
So I've got Jeff Herrmann on the podcast today. Jeff is the founder of Fathom. And
no.
Fathom. Oh, you're not the founder.
I'm the chief revenue officer.
You're the chief revenue officer. Whatever. I mean, we'll call you what you want to be called.
That's right.
I'm the chief bottle washer and trash taker out of CustomerBloom.
That's right. Chief cook and bottle washer, as my dad used to say.
Yeah, and so I guess I look at this and I go, from a perspective, we're a digital agency in New Jersey. We have a little bit unique approach on the market. You're an agency out in in the middle of the world. You're in Ohio. And what is it that you think makes that Fathom stand out?
We have passion and purpose. And so as a privately held agency, we have no one to answer to other than our ownership, our partnership structure. Mm-hmm. And so to the extent that we have, and here I'll play the Midwest thing to our advantage, right? We have Midwestern values, strong work ethic. And what makes us different is we grew up from a heads down SEO optimization standpoint. We productized SEO, more than 10 years ago. And just that blocking and tackling perspective and kind of boxing it up so it's digestible for a lot of our legacy clients who are, B2B manufacturers. That allowed us to grow and evolve into really now our core competencies are really delivering personalized and scalable communication strategies across the enterprise, with a data-driven DNA, and we really focus on innovative and scale-seeking CMOs. And we grew up executing and have, with the team, we've really embraced a more strategic approach. And our biggest area of growth is in marketing automation and CRM, because it's all about, that one-to-one communication and doing it at scale and with data, driving all the programs.
There's so much in there. So great. I get that.
Hey, I'm a sales guy, right? So of course you expected me to riff on you.
Yeah, no, I just was trying to right-size the discussion.
Yeah.
So I know we talked about this, briefly before we started sort of getting into the call, but your position in the market is probably upstream a little bit more than where we are from dealing with automation and the social selling piece, which I think is, the next sort of iteration where we're going to end up putting our efforts towards. I mean, really, we're at that phase where the majority of our customers are just coming at us saying, I want simple stuff. I want just traffic and conversions, right? Mm-hmm. Where it becomes more integrated when you start to go into the aspects of putting in a Marketo or a larger ended automation tool like a Infusionsoft and start really working with people on segregating profiles and stuff. But I had a question that relates to the brand itself. How did Fathom become Fathom? Was it you and Scott and Kevin starting it all together, or was it just because it seems like you've had the history here as part of your world?
Yeah, that's a great question. And Fathom became Fathom. We're almost 19 years old. It started as vendor tech. So out of the box in the late 90s, we digitized the Thomas register. And are you familiar with that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So we loaded that puppy on CD-ROMs. back in the day. And Bill Fox is the founder. And Bill Fox founded the company, took it from Vendor Tech to Fathom SEO. And our legal entity is still Fathom SEO LLC. And I only joined just shy of 5 years ago. And I joined because, unfortunately, Bill Fox passed. He had an untimely death. He had a heart attack. And he was the passionate driving force behind the company. And he started the company with at least a dozen other individuals. And he consolidated his position with Kevin and Scott back in around 2006 or 2007. And then that's what really, took Fathom SEO from a scrappy startup, shy of 30 people to where we are today, which is north of 150 people across Ohio, Columbus, and we actually have a team in Chicago as well. And yeah, it's funny though, because the name Fathom is very broad and vague, and we've had modifiers over time, and we're about to add another modifier back because people often say, aren't you the Fathom events that people you see in the movie trailers? And so we have to explain that. So branding is something, we've been so performance driven and results driven that branding's not something we've only appreciated as far as our public entity lately.
All right. So that sort of leads me to the next, conclusion here, which is that your aim has been initially off that Rolodex coming from that Thomas register must have been absolutely amazing, because you would have been able to see or have some visibility around some very interesting worlds. But the company itself, what would you say is the thing that keeps you motivated in this space? From why do you do what you do?
Well, it's several reasons, but we're very purpose driven, and so we're big supporters of the conscious capitalism movement, and we believe, like many others believe, that entrepreneurs and business can change the world. And no offense to big government or NGOs, but money moves markets, and money, when applied appropriately, most often through entrepreneurs and private organizations and private companies and public traded companies, can actually invest and move markets and make change. And so that's what keeps that's our purpose, right? And we've spent a lot of time on culture and purpose and letting our entire team know that they're here, and it's not simply a paycheck, it's a career. And that if even boil like down to something as simple as, I want to help my parents put an addition on their kitchen, and that's a purpose, that's a calling. But so that's kind of the broader perspective. Specifically, this is just a fun space. I mean, if you look at the MarTech landscape, you have that's upwards of 3,000 entities on the MarTech landscape, and this is just such a dynamic space. We're constantly learning. I'm personally passionate about social selling and the movement, the agenda being pushed by LinkedIn and others to help people connect on a more meaningful and relevant way using social media tools. So it's a lot of fun. I mean, that's the other side. It's just a lot of fun to be in this business.
That's great. Do you, at the end of the day, I think that we're trying to at least get some of the mindset strategy in this. Do you think that there's a certain type of, I would say, skill sets beyond obviously the sales piece, but the really what drives you to be successful? Is there a piece that you might want to impart from a perspective of how you go about your day that would impact maybe people on this call to help them get through the process of building a better structure in their day, or building a better structure through their the way that they strategize their business?
Right. Yeah. And in fact, we have a very big discipline around strategic planning, and we're big fans of Vern Harnish's Rockefeller Habits.
Oh yeah, I have one of his books. Yep.
Oh, cool. Yeah, we're using the Scaling Up book to develop our 7 strata of strategy. So we have always had a really strong focus on vision and purpose, and then specifically our operating model, or effectively what we get paid to do. We're using the scaling up methodology, and we're on a weekly basis. We have a small team of people from across the organization that meet. We establish a set of core competencies and what are we really good at, foundational things that don't change. For example, we have 10 years of experience in email marketing. We've sent over 1 billion emails. And so we took that foundational experience of email marketing and doing email marketing before marketing automation really existed. And we've applied that to where the fastest growing area of our business is helping companies that invest in a Marketo or a Pardot or a HubSpot, help them not only do an implementation, but strategy. Like literally, how do they write content, build assets, do campaign execution, and then ultimately drive sales productivity. So I would say, grab a book, take a framework, take a pass at it, and just the more focus. We're big believers in niche audience strategies, and the more you can focus and resonate with a specific persona. Like I mentioned this already, but our persona, literally you walk around, you tap anyone on the shoulder. Who's our persona? Innovative and scale-seeking sales leaders and CMOs. And boom. And just get to that point where there's such alignment and that there's an attraction model both internally and externally because of that.
So you had mentioned a couple of things in that passing. When we talk about the price or cost or investment range, what's the typical customer you're approaching now that will go into this space where you're going to help them like right size their Marketo strategy or go after and clean their HubSpot strategy out and start them into a real environment?
Well, that's a great question. And the obvious answer is it depends, right? So, but we do everything from projects, simply cleanup. And in many cases, a marketing automation program won't go effectively unless your CRM, your Salesforce instance is in check and there's good data hygiene. So it's one of those processes where you start digging in. Marketo even says, to the extent that when you're looking at investing in transforming your organization through marketing automation, I think the software alone is just a fifth of the investment. And, if you're allocating budget, the bulk of the investment really should go around driving the program forward, building content, campaigns, all the assets. And so, I can give you a range. We do projects just to kind of focus on hygiene and restructuring that start in the $25,000 to $50,000 range. Knows that typically we can, accomplish our goals within 2 to 3 months. But then ongoing programs, specifically we have many ongoing programs where it's a recurring revenue model, right? So we literally, to get the process flow and not only the logic and lead scoring down, but then the content and all the assets and making sure that we're constantly measuring and optimizing. That's upwards of starting at $30,000 a month up into the six figures. It all depends upon kind of the scope and how much they want to accomplish.
Right. And how many people usually work on a project for you? If let's just say the average project is like $50,000 a month to, work with a brand on.
That also, we're agile, right? So we have a core teams around our solutions, around search and paid and marketing automation and CRM. So to the extent that our marketing automation, and we call it nurture marketing specifically, we have more than 25 people just on that team alone, and there's a dedicated account team. Of course, the quarterback's the relationship, and to the extent that we have, people with specialties that participate on that project across content, across more the analytical side, the measurement side, the design, the building the assets and the campaign execution and the design. It's a range, really. It all depends upon the scope of the situation, but anywhere from a small team of 3 upwards of, we could have 12 people on a project at any given time.
Now, and you guys have got a pretty decent roster of customers and brands that you've been working with, and obviously being in business for this long, it's a different sort of enablement model where you're being picked out in a I would assume in an RFP process, typically?
We love RFPs, but quite frankly, we grow under our own power.
Right.
And so when I arrived, one of the goals, I worked at the Nielsen company for a long time. And of course, there I never had to prospect. You say Nielsen TV ratings and people take your call and they take your meeting and it's not a problem. So it was an interesting change. I was an intrapreneur at Nielsen. I built video game measurement and mobile media measurement and really helped support the online video measurement initiatives back, almost 10 years ago. Becoming an entrepreneur, we're working for a small privately held company. We have always had great referrals and, of course, great inbound because that's what we do for ourselves. But we really chose to pick a set of ideal clients across a set of verticals and just grow in a more predictable way under our own power. And that started as a prospecting program where good old-fashioned calls and emails, and we had hardcore measurement in Salesforce. But then we evolved into social selling. So we dropped the volumetric approach because email marketing, email prospecting, spamming cold prospects does not work. Social selling does work. Using social tools, not only observing who your targets are, researching and observing your targets, but then engaging with them and finding out relevant things about them. I believe you're a musician. I just noticed a couple things. So, we can I can dig into that topic with you. I have a musical background. Just what are things we can pick up that are relevant that can help build those initial seeds of the relationship? And then my personal passion, which is why, I do a lot of podcast interviews, is how do we all become creators? I'm such a believer in the fact that everyone has an opportunity to express themselves these days, and that the best way to scale your relationships and scale your revenue is to become a creator of content. And you can assume an authority position in your space. If you have passion, commitment, and an iPhone 6 Plus, you can build a global audience. I mean, it's that easy these days. And so that's my personal passion, is helping a lot of entrepreneurs and sales leaders break through by just embracing the tools that are available to all of us, and then just really focusing on the disciplined approach to building their own audience, and which effectively builds their business.
Yeah. So one of the things that we noticed is that you've done some speaking engagements, and where do you sort of put yourself? Obviously, you've got yourself titled as a CRO officer, but where do you, in your speaking engagements, where have you found the sweet spot for the audience that they want to hear?
It's the most effective speaking engagements I've had are motivated individuals, and I resonate really well with marketing-minded sales leaders and sales-minded marketing leaders, oddly enough. So people with personal motivation to express themselves and feel like they have a story to tell and they want to tell it at scale, and what tools can they use, and why they should tell their story, because everyone has a really interesting story to share. I do a fair amount of LinkedIn profile consulting, and for example, the summary section, like everyone should have something personal or interesting in their summary, just to not be superficial, and just using LinkedIn as kind of like your online, job profile resume database. And it really resonates just from, I'm certainly nowhere near, the personal development world of do your best and be awesome. I'm just a guy that loves social media and loves to help other people express themselves. And I'm really find myself being the Rick Rubin of digital marketing, because I've helped a lot of other marketing and sales leaders set themselves up on a YouTube channel, focus on what to say, how to say it, when to do it, and just get a lot of personal joy out of that process.
All right, so let's do a real-time consulting 5-second gig. So I do a Periscope every morning around 9 o'clock. I take it, I post it into LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, into our corporate pages. I then take that converted into a podcast. It goes into our YouTube channel, and it goes into back into distribution. What would you suggest I do beyond that?
I would say do less, honestly. Like, you've got all the bases covered. Mm-hmm. And that's one of the biggest challenges. And I struggle with the same thing. Literally, what's your source content? So it sounds like your original source content is Periscope, so that live video. Mm-hmm. And then taking that asset and then repurposing that asset as many times as you can. That's fantastic. And if you can do it in a scalable way in a disciplined manner, it's phenomenal. And the question I have for you is, which platforms do you feel like you get the most engagement from?
LinkedIn.
Yeah. Same with me. I've done YouTube, and I had a YouTube channel, and I can dial back about a year here, but right around last year at this time, I had a passion for doing a podcast, and I wanted to get into podcasting in a big way. Signed up for Copy Bloggers, showrunner program, bought the podcast online course. I really enjoyed that. I really enjoyed that content and that organization in general. But I really was working out what I wanted to say, what I wanted to accomplish. So I took to YouTube, and I set up a YouTube channel, and I just started shooting 2 to 5 minute videos, and got into a repetition, got into a pattern. And I got squat for engagement on YouTube, but when I would share it on LinkedIn, it would really resonate. And to this day, LinkedIn is, even though I source my content or produce the content, so to speak, via video, I recently shifted over to Facebook Live as my point of origin, of which I save that, send it over to YouTube, upload it, and then share it out on LinkedIn. Because the Facebook, embedding Facebook video and having it surface in other places still is not a great experience. But I would say that where a lot of people I work with fall down is they're doing too much, and you pick a channel and you just hammer on that channel for a period of time, get engagement, and almost you never truly conquer a channel, but you get to be known. So I'm sure you have the great it sounds like you have the great consistency, and you've built that behavioral expectation. So I'm sure they'll miss you if you're gone, right? If you stop producing, people probably ping you and say, "Hey, where'd you go?" And if they do that, you're successful.
Well, I've been experimenting with Snapchat lately as well, and I'm wondering, with the advent of sort of the mobile sort of most people are meandering through mobile and trying to figure out what's the best way to work it. And Snapchat stories is another thing that's been interesting, but obviously there's a lot of people who aren't on that platform yet, and the audience is typically 13 to 25. So, but there are some core like SEO guys that I sort of snap back and forth, so it's more of a personalized internet texting gig.
Right.
But so Periscope was interesting because there was live participation, which I really thought was cool, because I believe that that's sort of the access strategy that's missing in a lot of people's visibility profile.
Right.
So I guess I look at this and I go, Periscope is an idea. Facebook Live, to me, is probably a better idea now that it's actually up and running.
Oh, yeah.
It's just not very formatted very well.
Right.
That will come. And that's why I was curious as to, does it make sense to maneuver into Facebook Live and then use that as the platform, because your accessibility is better. Periscope's limited because it's not a platform that's very visible to a lot of people on their phone. But I think that's sort of these decisions that I'm trying to think about, like what's the best way to be consistent. That's the number one thing. I think the podcast, that certainly helps, because it's more. The podcast goes up every day now instead of like once a week. It's literally every day, along with like our discussions that we have today. Anything else you're seeing in the field that you're seeing from a retail level or a we work with a lot of manufacturing companies as well, and I get it, where there could be some advantages that maybe someone who's listening to this right now is thinking, what could I do for my customer to help them grow their activity beyond the marketing automation stuff that we talked about earlier.
Right. It is literally having a strategy behind your content marketing, and that sounds so obvious. You're like, of course, but content marketing governs everything. It governs your social media strategy. It governs our prospecting strategy. It's to the extent that you set goals and have a content marketing mission statement. And I can share our direct experience. We have a great team, a lot of creators posting to our blog on a consistent basis. Lots of great insight, but it was a little all over the place. Like, you got great insight on tactics, but to the extent that you want to harmonize it and really make it resonate, we spent a fair amount of time developing editorial guidelines this past year. And we have, I mentioned before, our target of innovative and scale-seeking sales leaders and CMOs. That's our persona, and we go a little deeper on that. But then editorial guidelines and really focusing on a core set of themes, and we publish that and make it well known. And that ability, once again, if you're targeting everyone, you're targeting no one. So that having that thematic approach governed by a content marketing strategy led by a strong content marketing mission statement. And of course, the mission statement, I'm quoting Joe Pulizzi, but it's, who's the target, what's delivered, and what's the outcome for the audience. And just answering those simple things and making it prevalent drives so much value, because you really just focus your effort and you know why you're working, and you end up getting away from just churning out stuff and kind of making meaningful progress towards a very specific goal.
Interesting. That's a lot said in a couple of sentences, because there's a lot of pieces to that.
Oh, tons. Yeah.
So let's get back into just the company, and then I want you to talk a little bit about what you're up to. What size? Can you give me just a kind of scale of the size of where you guys fit, or where, from a revenue perspective, like where you were 10 years ago, and or maybe but where you were, when you really entered into this digital marketing phase, and just a 5-minute sort of like, so that people who are in their growth stage, they're growing just like we are. We're growing quickly into our sort of mature phase, where we're getting our people aligned up into teams, and it's a big phase growth for us. But you've kind of are past that initial stage. You're in more of a matured environment. Just give us a little background of that, if you wouldn't mind. Sure.
Yeah, I literally, we're self-admitted awkward teenagers.
Okay.
So we still absolutely, trip and get bumps and bruises along the way, but it's such a great learning opportunity. So today, just around the company, around Fathom, we're north of 150 team members today. We've been on the Inc. 5000 list for, I think, 5 years running now. So we grow at a 30% per year, 30% a year growth rate. Mm-hmm. And that our mix has changed, though. So what was once, significant growth in SEO and paid media, which are still great contributors, from a growth rate standpoint, we found that our marketing automation and CRM programs have really taken off and are leading our growth. So, being that we're listed in Ad Age and on the Inc. 5000, we're north of a $20 million organization on our run rate right now. And that, once again, we started as a really small organization. I think the initial team was 3 to 5 people, and really got off and running around 2003. Once again, really focused on productized SEO. So that we've just evolved, and through things like the disciplined approach to a growth model, through the Rockefeller habits, and daily huddles, quarterly priorities, annual goals, following those frameworks, we've of course we've structured and restructured now and again. So product centric, team centric, then solution centric. We've evolved and we have now we've taken a vertical approach. So we know we resonate. We have really wonderful traction in the healthcare, higher education, and consumer brand space. And so we have dedicated teams to that where we have a high degree of intimacy. We still have a core set of solutions, a solutions team at the core, which applies, their knowledge and expertise to solve the client problems. And then we have kind of an opportunistic approach. So we're just not going out targeting anyone and everyone, because that doesn't lead to sustainable growth. So we're pretty disciplined with our inbound leads, and we have lots of partners that we have good lead flow, but we may pass leads off to a lot of individuals, partners or other agencies, simply because we really prefer to stick to our ideal client profile, and found we just have great retention rates when we do that.
Yeah, that's what it's all about in this business, is to hold on to clients that trust you. And I just had a client meeting this morning, and we were talking about building an e-commerce solution and blah blah blah, and I got to the part where how much does this cost? I said, I'm not really interested in how much it costs. I'm interested in how long we can be a valued partner for you.
Right.
And I think that changed the conversation, into a discussion about a relationship as opposed to a transaction. So.
Right. Absolutely.
Good. So what do you got going on that we should know about as we get to the kind of wrap-up section here, and anything, speaking engagements or anything about Fathom that you'd like to just impart with us? Sure.
Yeah, definitely. Once again, back on, we're having, there's so much to share, but specifically, I'll be at Content Marketing World talking about Social Selling 101, and I have a podcast specifically focused on social selling in the age of content marketing, and how individual sales leaders and thought leaders, or individual sales leaders and marketing leaders, can really evolve into thought leaders. And the tools are at our disposal to share your knowledge and expertise, and that's a fantastic way to connect with customers. And I've had so many occasions where I've connected with someone on LinkedIn, they find my content, they spend just a few minutes with some of my videos on my YouTube channel or things they see on LinkedIn. And then we have a phone conversation, and I just heard this last week, like, well, you're perfectly consistent. You're kind of goofy on the phone and you're kind of goofy on your videos, but you're authentic, and I feel like I know you already. And that allows us to just advance the relationship a little bit more quickly and just jump right in versus having that getting to know you phase. So the podcast I release on a weekly basis is called Publish or Perish: Selling in the Age of Content Marketing, and it's on iTunes, and I have a website, to host it. It's publishorperish.fm, Frank Mary, and you can find me there.
Cool. Very cool. Very cool. Yeah, we're cut from the same cloth on the fact that I think the leadership visibility is a big push that people should do, but I have a caveat that I don't think it's for everybody. I think there are only a select few that will actually follow through and be consistent, because it takes a dedicated effort to be prepared to make that part of your life.
You're right. Yeah, you're spot on, because otherwise it's I don't know, you really, when you do jump in, as silly as it's funny, I'm doing Facebook Live sessions, and primarily I'm not active personally on Facebook. I've just embraced it more recently for business purposes. However, my wife and all her friends, they live on Facebook. So I'm getting a fair amount of ribbing, like, what's your husband doing? Like, what the heck is he doing on Facebook with the video? But you just got to be bold and push through and realize that there are actually prospects out there looking for that. So yeah.
I agree. And all your friends from high school end up putting their funny little comments about your...
Oh, don't get me started.
Yeah, I got
Don't get me started.
It's all good in the end, because you keep showing up and they keep commenting. You're like, you know what?
Thank you.
You're adding to the flavor. You're just
Right.
You're making my algorithm be better. So just keep commenting. I don't care what you put it there.
Right.
Awesome. All right, great. It was a pleasure talking to you. I'm really impressed with the size and scope of. You're so further along than we are, but we're just a cog in another framework where we support a certain type of customer. You support a certain type of customer. Where we're all sort of in the same marketing space. We just do different vehicles, and I hope we cross each other's paths at some point at one of these shows in the physical format. So
That'd be great.
We can have a more poignant discussion about all this fun animation of your character. I'd like to delve more into.
Yeah, it's fun. Matt, it was really great talking to you. I enjoyed the time today.
Good. All right, man. Thank you.
All right, take it easy.
We've reached the end of this episode of CustomerBloom's Growing Business Faster podcast. So be sure to subscribe to the show and stay connected to us on CustomerBloom.com. We appreciate you joining us and look forward to providing you with realistic ways to help support and accelerate your business here on the Growing Business Faster podcast, brought to you by CustomerBloom.